Insight that gets left on the shelf is kind of our biggest enemy as an industry, and we're kind of desperate that we don't become work that doesn't really kind of go anywhere. Welcome, James, and welcome everybody to this first episode of a podcast from the team at The Good Side, where we're going to be talking through this series about our takes on the industry, on the work that we do, and really what makes us special.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about all sorts of things with different people from the team, our super talented and lovely team, and maybe some special guests as well. And this time we're going to start by talking about why craft and quality are important within the work that we do in cultural insight, strategic recommendations around how to engage and understand audiences, and of course storytelling and filmmaking.
Where to start? I guess for me, an obvious place to start is that when we formed The Good Side, we were really adamant that craft was going to be a kind of key part of how we worked. And the way that we talked about it, and I still talk about it today, is akin to a craft beer. So if you think about craft beer as opposed to kind of industrialized lager, it's a small number of people who are really obsessive about what they do, who take really good ingredients and make a really fantastic product. The difference comes out in the taste and the kind of uniqueness of what they do. We want to apply that to the work that we did, thinking about the way that we bring people together, the kinds of people that we hire, and the way that we approach the work.
And now we call ourselves a craft-based strategy studio because we've centered craft in everything that we do. From what you said, made me think about who it attracts to our business in terms of talent. We do have such incredibly talented people who are really laser focused on quality and who are at the top of their game in their fields.
Yeah, definitely. And I think, often what happens when people come here is that early on in their time at The Good Side, often people say to me, gosh, people here really care about what they're doing. And I always think it's really funny because for me, I kind of think if you're going to bother coming somewhere every day of the week, then you might as well care about what you're doing. And otherwise, I think life would be kind of, a bit kind of grey. But people still remark to me when they come into the organisation how surprising it is how much people care.
Well, that would be nice for our clients and partners to hear, won't it? Because can you imagine if you went to buy a service like what we do, which is sometimes very complicated, mixed methodologies across multiple disciplines. You definitely want people who actually care about what they're doing, don't you?
Yeah, totally. And thinking about your work in terms of the studio, the kind of storytelling output, kind of creative element of the business, how would you say that craft is kind of central to the way that you work?
Well, I think it's central to when we formed. When we came together to create The Good Side, it was all about bringing our two disciplines together, really, and having a purpose and having a values-based business. Bringing in your anthropological research background, strategic insight, and with my filmmaking experience, we wanted to really challenge the research industry, the market research industry around the quality of filmmaking outputs. Like our first project ever was with the Case Foundation, which was so formative in everything that we've done, like this huge longitudinal study around early child development in 2 communities in Kenya. And part of that was creating a documentary. And we were really lucky, they were very open-minded about what we were going to create. But we really invested a huge amount of time and care in the quality of that film. And we were lucky to learn straight off the bat the value of that, because the impact of that work was huge in the early child development industry. A lot of organisations really pivoted in what they spend their money on. So it's really embedded right in the core of the origin story of The Good Side, and we've carried that through. I've always gathered around me people who are just really, really talented at what they do. Behind the camera right now is an Emmy award-winning filmmaker, not just an Emmy, like literally all the awards. It's just important to us that when we make films that they're not just quite basic, bland films that, no offence, sometimes you see in the market research industry, that they are beautiful, that they have a narrative arc, that they're interesting, that they're skillful, that they're engaging and entertaining. All of that stuff really, really matters to me and all of us. How does it show up when you're thinking about insight and strategy?
I think it kind of shows up throughout the piece. So I think, we have always really over-invested in. We talk about the idea that kind of quality in, quality out is a kind of key part of how we think about what we do. And actually, when you're building a research project, thinking about the way that you recruit participants to that project, thinking about the tools that you design in terms of the research interventions themselves, the inquiries themselves, the questions you ask, the way that you kind of create whether it's a survey or a discussion guide or an online task, and or a kind of more kind of immersive way of kind of working, that actually you can start setting up your kind of quality from that point. I think that it's very easy when you work in any industry for a long period of time to get into a kind of very processy way of doing things, where you're kind of almost like just churning yourself out because you know how to do it, and it's sort of like it feels like every day it can be a bit similar. And I think we've always sort of strived to not look at things like that, to always treat an inquiry like a fresh kind of question and to try and remain kind of curious. And I think that if you have that sense of curiosity as well as a sense of commitment to the quality of the tools and the processes, then it really stands you in great stead. So I think that's the kind of upfront piece. I think the other thing is that when we come into the research itself, we're always really keen that the participants and the clients have a great experience. And we talk about this idea that all three parties need to have a great experience. The participants, the clients, and the team should all be kind of really enjoying themselves and feel really, really invested in the kind of inquiry and in the kind of questions as they evolve. Otherwise, it sort of doesn't really have a sense of kind of authenticity, I think, and kind of meaning. And then when it comes to the outputs, we're very interested and kind of focused on kind of creating really solid, strategic debriefs. And so we always try to approach them the way that a creative agency would approach their strategy work. So, we're kind of selling the insight to a team and trying to communicate the insight to stakeholders. Just like when an ad agency is trying to, pitch a kind of like multi-million pound idea, they'll put so much into developing that story. And quite a lot of our team come from that background, so have lived and worked in those agencies. Have worked in those kind of agencies. Hopefully, you can live there the whole time.
Sounds unhealthy.
Must check. But have been in those kind of agencies where there's just so much investment in building the story and really kind of together kind of crafting that narrative. And I think it's very core to the outputs that we produce. And I think it's testament to the amount, the commitment and the kind of quality that we put into it, that actually we see our slides kind of leave our presentations and appear in client decks. And for us, that's almost like the ultimate kind of win, is when you haven't just delivered a debrief, but actually someone says to you like a month later, I nicked 4 of those slides and I put them in my decks. It makes you feel like it must have really worked. They must have really landed for them to kind of go into a client piece of content.
Listening to you speak made me think about the word quality and how expansive that word can be. Like, it is quality not just for the partner in terms of the outputs and the storytelling, but also the experiences of the team and like you say, participants. Same with filmmaking, like we adhere to a kind of principle around dignified storytelling, so that people do have a good experience and it's not extractive, and they do get to give feedback, and they get an opportunity to see if there's any red lines that are crossed in the film before it goes out, especially if it's public facing. But when it comes to an agency partner relationship, quality is about expectations in a way, isn't it? One of the reasons we wanted to create The Good Side is that we wanted to meet higher expectations. So I sort of almost feel like saying that partners should expect more from agencies. They should expect higher quality outputs, because that is possible if you have a good team who is craft obsessed.
Absolutely. And I think it sort of comes down to the way that you approach doing business. I think if you think about any kind of sector, you have people in that sector who offer like a super value proposition, right? It's like a cheap, quick way to get whatever it might be. Like, let's just take chocolate as an example. There'll be like value brands, then there'll be kind of mass brands, and then there'll be kind of niche, kind of more petite, kind of more kind of artisan, sort of like independent brands. And within any sector, those kind of things always is. And it's about how you choose to compete. Are you choosing to be the cheapest option? Are you choosing to be the most available kind of mass market, get it anywhere, quick option? Or are you choosing to be something that's more kind of sought out and more kind of prized? And I think we've always seen ourselves as the latter. And so I think that the way that we kind of compete within the space we operate in is to try and be the best quality at a reasonable kind of cost, and try to stack it up as a way whereby people come to you who appreciate that value.
What is your favourite niche chocolate product?
I think at the minute, like, it's probably some sort of... actually, it would have been Chocolonely, Toner's Chocolonely for quite a long time.
Not so niche.
No, not so niche anymore, but it's still quite niche, I suppose.
And high quality.
It's sort of like probably moving from a niche into a bit more into a mass, which is kind of nice for them. And I guess testament to the fact that they have like developed a really high quality position with ethics around it, which we might talk about in another episode. But I think there's this new brand, I think it might be called NU actually, and it is really high quality chocolate with nut butter inside it. So there's like a hazelnut one, there's an almond one, there's a peanut one, and there's like very little sugar in it. So it sort of like ticks some kind of like slightly healthy boxes, but it's also like really indulgent, and I love that.
Wow, I wasn't expecting such a full answer, if I'm honest. That's impressive. That's true. Definitely detailed mind. When it comes to size of agency, that feels like quite a critical factor in craft and quality to me. And being a boutique agency, what do you think that means for us? Why does that mean we can offer a better kind of quality?
Yeah, I don't think it's as kind of clear cut as, big agencies can't do things that are crafted in high quality, because I'm sure there's lots that manage to do that. I think it is easier when you're smaller and when you're independent. I think on a number of levels. One is that, we have much more oversight in terms of what's going on, and we're kind of not involved in everything, but we are able to develop kind of a sense of practice and a sense of craft that we can then sort of maintain, and we don't have to build really complex systems in order to kind of keep that in check. Whereas I think if you're a big agency, in order to maintain a level of quality and craft, you have to have a sense of kind of like the discipline and the process that's like really evolved, which I think is really hard to land and to maintain. I think also because we're independent and, we own the business, it's really kind of up to us how it performs. And I think we, probably our accountants and commercial like consultants would say that we could potentially think a bit less about craft and quality, but we're really committed to that, to really delivering an amazing kind of product and an amazing experience all the time, and that being like what's really driving us rather than anything else. So we're not, I'm telling you this, but this as well, we're not super commercial people. We are much more interested in the impact of what we do, and obviously things being kind of like commercially viable, but actually delivering a great solution and being really super useful is what we're trying to do, and why we kind of come to work every day. So I think that's a little bit about us and how we do it. But yeah, I do think that it's part of the sort of boutique offer, or the kind of independent offer, is that I was thinking about this morning actually on the way in. What I think is quite interesting within the insight space, the strategic insight space, is that I think we're at a time where there are a fairly large number of small to medium high quality boutique agencies, which is kind of amazing for clients because there's loads of great partners to work with. Harder for those people because it means there's a greater sense of competition at that level. But I think that, and I don't think it's just applies to Insight, I think it's happening across the agency landscape. The larger agencies are finding it harder because the commercial environment is probably more challenging than it's been for a few years. Lots of technological disruptions that are starting to really freak people out across the industry. And when I talk to people at senior levels within big networks, they're really worried. But when I talk to people who run their own business, they're kind of just trying to hold on to the rudder and just, sort of like calmly sort of strike an even keel. Is that even an analogy?
I don't do much in boats. I can't help you.
Right.
I've got great sea legs, but I can't work a boat.
Just like go forward steadily.
Yes, I do. Yeah. Yeah. I think that's been a really interesting journey for us, not to get too much into the weeds of the numbers of things, but we haven't really desperately tried to grow. We just sort of accidentally grown, haven't we? Because we've been focused on craft and quality. And so we've had a lot of repeat business, a lot of the people who work with us right at the start, a lot of the partners who were like there right at the formation of the Good Side are still with us today. And I think that has meant that we've been able to have quite a steady trajectory, and whenever we have grown, we've tried to contain it a little bit and trying to keep control over it. I would really, really not like to work for a company where there's some like venture capitalist overlord kind of squeezing it the whole time and trying to make it more and more profitable at the expense of everybody's experiences first and foremost, but also the actual quality and the impact of the work. I would not like that. Thanks very much.
Yeah, noted. No, I think that's really fair. And I think you're right. I think it's really impressive that we have some key clients who've been with us from the outset, and really our biggest clients today have been our biggest clients, over the past 8 years, because they're really, we have a very consistent product and they have a really consistent experience. Consistent sounds boring. I think we do lots of different things with those people and we approach lots of different problems with them, and we're refreshing the work all the time, but it's more about the consistency of the experience that I think they have, and the consistency of the people that we have relationships with that are that are maintained.
Yeah, and not getting complacent about those relationships. Interesting stat. Once we got B Corp certified, well, part of that process was measuring our impact and the quality of our relationships. And since we've started doing that survey with our partners about a year ago, all 100% of them have scored 5 out of 5 for would they recommend us to somebody else as a partner agency to work with.
Yeah, it's so impressive, isn't it?
Yeah, it's so good. I'm going to be so furious if we ever get a 4. I get such a buzz from a 5 out of 5, don't you? It makes me feel so good, not just about the fact that we've done good work and there has been impact has been seen across their organisation, but also just knowing that the team have done a really good job and that you can say to them, we know you've done a good job, but look at this, it's like a 5 out of 5 from the actual people who have paid for the work you've done. I just feel really good about being able to share that with the team when it happens.
Yeah, I think it's really, when you work in a kind of strategic consultancy space, you deliver advice and you deliver kind of recommendations and you deliver a bunch of insight, and then you kind of go away, and then clients get on with their day job and take that forward. And I think it's really hard sometimes to experience that sense of kind of like positive feedback. We're always kind of trying to be useful and impactful. And I think those moments where you do get, when it comes down to a score, or just like the repeat business, the fact that people kind of keep coming back, as I mentioned before, I think those are the moments where you realize that it is kind of like that what you're doing is useful. When it comes to outputs, I think a lot of insight falls down on the quality of the debrief and the document. And I think because a lot of our team sat in strategic roles in creative agencies and in other environments, they have a really great sense of how to construct a strategic argument and how to craft documents that will really travel within an organization. And really, I think insight that gets left on the shelf is kind of our biggest enemy as an industry. And we're kind of desperate that we don't become work that doesn't really kind of go anywhere. And I think it really shows in the documents that we produce.
For sure. I feel the same way about filmmaking.
I'm sure a lot of people listening to this podcast will be thinking...
Millions of people.
the billions around the world that are going to be tuning into this piece of content.
On tenterhooks for the next one.
I know, exactly. Wondering what the next topic might be. I'm going to be thinking, sure, this sounds like a very expensive proposition. I've talked about kind of the independent brands and talked about kind of boutique offering. It all sounds pricey.
Well, obviously, we look expensive as well, which doesn't help. But I think that's true. I think it does sound expensive, but it isn't. I think that we work in a way that means that we have nimble teams who are hyper-focused. Like if I think about our film outputs, for example, specifically, I think that because they are really high production values and professionally made, I think they look expensive. So I think probably potential partners might think that we're a bit too spenny for them, but we're not at all, because in our team of filmmakers, we're from a discipline that means that we've had to learn how to do loads of different roles. Documentary filmmakers generally are producers, directors, writers. They'll do sound, they'll do lighting, they'll do everything. When you have a good budget, you'll get experts in to do that stuff, but we're multidisciplined, and so we actually aren't expensive. We can do quite a lot of stuff with quite a small amount of money. What about on your side?
Yeah, I think when it comes to the insight and strategy part of the business, we have quite a senior team who are delivering a lot of the work. And I think that our rates, just generally speaking, aren't particularly high, and we're kind of very conscious of where they're at. And we often do a bit of benchmarking as best we can around how we kind of compete with other agencies. But I think that because we are, a senior team delivering a lot of the work, and we don't have that kind of like big agency model where there's like a bunch of people on a budget, and this happens across the creative industries, not just within research, where there are a bunch of people on a budget who might show up for like the first and last meeting. And I think clients are really kind of wise to that. And I think we have always been really keen not to become that, to become a kind of overinflated model. So I think that means that we offer real value for money because you are getting the people that you think you're getting. I think the other thing is that we're really good at being really nimble and really inventive around how to make things work. We have quite a few non-profit clients who have really tiny budgets for really obvious reasons, and we're always trying to work out how we can make something work for them. Obviously, we have, a lower rate for those people anyway, but then also we're always trying to kind of make things go as far as they can. So wherever the client comes into the mix, I think we're just always really keen to have a money conversation from the outset so that we know what we're working with and try to really make that money work as best it can.
So, as a small agency, a boutique agency that's craft focused and quality obsessed, I feel like this conversation could be summed up in, would you agree, in bigger isn't always better?
Tough one.
Depends on the context.
Maybe it's less about size and more about practice.
Maybe. Oh my God.